Welcome to Align Your Practice, an exploration of the seamless relationship between the business of chiropractic and the future of natural health care. Join us as we engage with an array of talent, from seasoned experts to passionate new entrepreneurs. Now, here's your host, Dr. Joe Esposito.
Hi, welcome to Align Your Practice podcast. This is Dr. Joe Esposito. I'm excited for today's guest, Dr. David Foster. We're going to be talking about selling your practice. David, how are you?
Good, Joe. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited, David. This topic has become, it seems to be more of a vocal piece of the profession lately. I don't know if it's because of my awareness around it or a lot of voices starting to talk about transitions, buying, selling, different models of selling through private equity, individual sales. Do you feel that the market's just maturing, or is there just more voice around it? The selling
I
of a
think it's a great
practice.
time to sell a practice because people are getting more of value at this time. Chiropractic is finally reaching the point where it's profitable. It's profitable to investors. And when it's profitable to investors, mostly private equity, it just raises the tide for all of us. Even the smaller practice is worth more now compared to years ago. I've been coaching people on selling for over 20 years, and there has never been a better time now. We're actually getting looked at because medical is fading a little bit and alternative healthcare is growing. Post COVID, the interest has grown dramatically.
Yeah, I think that's a good place for us to start, is the maturing of the industry, of the market itself, and looking
Mhm.
at chiropractic 20 years ago. I don't remember how long we've known each other, but it's definitely over 10. I don't know about 20, but it's been a little while. But over the last decade, I would say what's happened in the marketplace is not only has the industry foraged through Wall Street and showing a good valuation, it's also shown itself in private equity with a strong valuation. And what's happening is the marketplace, the salaries of doctors are going up, the sale of the practice value is going up, and we're looking at, in the past, and I don't want to go through exact numbers, but in the past, the average sale of a practice would be one-time net income, and now it's going to an average of 2 time to 2.5 time. And if you have enough
Mhm.
EBITDA, the multiples are going up 3, 4, 5 times more than that. So it is, like you said, a great time to sell a practice. So let's
It
get
is.
granular to give some practicality to it for someone on this podcast listening, maybe not ready to sell today, hopefully not ready to sell today, hopefully thinking about selling the next 5 to 6 years. And why don't you break down with your expertise in this profession? I know, I want to spend a moment talking a little about your background. I've known David for, like I said, well over a decade, and I've seen you in chiropractic economics. I've seen you in many organizations helping doctors with contracts for hiring employed doctors. I've seen you in circles helping in consultants, using you in your ability to put together a buy-sell agreement with people. I've seen you in all kinds of either agreements, contracts, employment. Is that kind of, just to start off, is that kind of where you live inside that whole realm of contracting, employment, all the types of deals in Cairo? How would you just set the stage for the listener?
You know how life goes. I everything is cumulative in life. I was a securities broker. I went back to school and became a chiropractor. So I have this interest and I guess talent I've accumulated over the years. I had multiple practices. I'll tell the story quickly. I had a multiple practice, and people would call me all the time and say, "What do I do with this? What do I do with that?" And I help people, and I never charged anybody. And someone sent me $100 bill for helping them. And I said, "Hey, I could consult." This was 20 something years ago. And I started building this unique little niche of non-chiropractic, but more business application with chiropractors because I know how chiropractors think. So that's where I've been. And I do all those things, appraisals and the business end of chiropractic. That's why my consulting company is Back Office Consults, because it's all back office stuff. Anyway, that's a little history. But let's
That
get
makes,
to pardon me.
yeah,
Let's
that
get
makes
into
total sense. Sorry, I think.
right. So let's get into what your audience wants to hear. What's the procedure to sell a practice? And I just got a call last week from someone I've known for 30 years, great chiropractor, and she wants to sell. And my first question is, when do you want to sell? She said, "Oh, 6 months." I said, "Whoa, you're coming to the party late. You're way behind schedule in selling your practice. So you have to get a good strategy, and I recommend at least 2 years. Why 2 years? Well, first, you want to gather some information about your practice. I gave her a practice profile form to fill out, and she said, I am so surprised on the data because I never even knew what I was doing. She was just a typical chiro, great person, but she didn't understand how the data relates. So if you were able to first say, I'm going to do this in 2 years, I'm going to improve my practice, so that you gather data, you evaluate the data, you look at the negative areas, and you try to build them up so you get a better rate of return. Stage one. Agree, Joe? You've seen so many people that want to do it quickly and they're just not prepared.
Yes, I agree. And I think even more clarity that I'm starting to bring this conversation into the marketplace is that there's a difference between when you want to retire and when you want to sell your business. Retiring is I want to stop seeing patients potentially, or I want to stop running the business, whether you're at table side or whether you're running the business. That is different than selling the practice, because if you do the right sale, you're going to have to stay on for a long transition, because a seasoned buyer, meaning a business, is going to want you to stay until they sell their business. So that run rate is 3 to 5 year period of time where you can get 2 bites of the apple. And that's a deeper conversation. But if you want to be a mature seller, if you want to look at not 1 year's income, but you want to look at a true nest egg, a true retirement, you're going to have the time to mature that sale. So think of it differently. You may want to sell your practice and you want to sell it at the height of the business. Then you want to spend 3 to 5 years slowly working out of the job detail, working part-time. But what most people do is they start slowly semi-retiring. The average chiro, single practitioner, one doctor. They're going less marketing. I don't need that anymore. Less hours. Their value keeps going down and down, and they sell when they want to retire. I would recommend selling 3 to 5 years before you retire, so you have the time in order to build value.
I think it depends on the practice. But let me go stage two, and then we'll bounce that around, because what you're talking
Sure.
about is private equity. After you gather your information, you're looking at your weak areas, you build your weak areas. It may take you 6 to 8 months. Now you build a pro forma. What is a pro forma? It's basically a full marketing package on your practice. You should have every bit of data in this, so no one is asking you, hey, can you please get me this information or that information? You want to be professional, have it all together. It's a nice book report on your practice, and it's ready to be presented to the chiropractor digitally as well as hard copy. But it's also for the chiropractor's consult, their accountant, their lawyer, whomever they're using as a consultant, that they are going to believe. They're not going to believe you, but they're going to believe their consultant. So if the pro forma is professional, it brings it up a notch, and you will make more money on a better pro forma. That's what I found over the years.
Totally agree. I think that's a huge missing link. Most people are just position the practice for sale or what they want for retirement or what they need to pay their debt. You have to be able to build value from the document that you just mentioned.
Now, once you have this pro forma, now you say to yourself, what kind of practice do I have where I can get the best return on investment? Do I have a solo practice? Do I have multiple associates? Am I totally not practicing what Dr. Joe was just talking about, private equity? Who could I sell this to, which is going to give me the most value for my practice? But now you have it in hard copy form. You have data analytics, and you'll be able to say, this is the best for this buyer. Maybe a great associate, maybe a cold body that found it off of a website, a broker. We don't know, but you're going to have a better idea who you're selling it to once you have the data. A lot of people come to me and say, I want to sell it to private equity. It is not a private equity practice. And there's different characteristics that I'm not going to go into, but the pro forma has to be solid, and it has to be your sales tool.
I agree 100%.
The next, you do. It's the better presentation. I always, I'm looking for a car right now, and the better presentation gets me more interested in the car. Just human nature, the more professional. The next stage is marketing your practice for sale. And there's different avenues to do this. Broker, there's some great brokers out there, very professional. You can try to do it on your own. You can shop through different outlets. I help people. Getting the word out is important. Then fielding people that have inquiries and knowing how to do that without pushing them. The more you push somebody, the more they push away, because there's a tremendous emotional component to them. They're very, very fearful. All buyers are fearful. So you have to put them at ease. You have to have someone else to present it. I always relate it to art. Our practices are our art. And if we say, look at this piece of art, look at our practice, isn't it great? It's great, it's great, it's great. They're not going to buy it. An artist cannot sell their own art. They need somebody else to say, look, this is a great practice. And it's much more believable. And the reception is better by the buyer when you have that. The next is now you're going to field offers. I could only say to you that I have dealt with so many chiropractors that do it so unprofessionally. Okay, you get them to sign a non-disclosure agreement. Do it like a business person, not like a typical old-time chiropractor. You don't cut deals on a cocktail napkin. You do it professionally. They sign a non-disclosure. You give them an offer. They counter offer. It's all in writing. They have to know what they're buying. You can't say, I'm just going to sell the practice. There's a lot of components when it comes to selling a practice. So do it professionally. That's where a person like me comes into the mediation, the negotiation, and I keep everybody honest. So the seller can get what they want and the buyer can get what they want. It has to be win-win, but it should be professional. The negotiation goes back and forth. Everything is written down. Nothing, hey man, I got a practice to sell. I've seen that so many times. Doesn't work. Doesn't work well.
Yeah, I agree. Having a representative is so crucial. There's many different ways in brokers. I know you've helped many of the practices that we've had over the years to have an objective stance. So the broker has to really present the package as a business. And the way you present it is your baby. You present it in a certain language that is, it's not persuasive because it's so emotional for you. And I think to really sell, like you're saying, you have to get the data and have some broker, some business liaison represent the practice. I think you'll sell faster for more dollars if you have it
with less aggravation.
Yeah, true.
Right.
Very true.
My experience proves that I know what's going to happen before it happens. And it's interesting. You start, in fact, I just wrote an article for Chiro Economics. It's called The Emotions of a Sale. And it starts off, two people get together, they're happy. It's a kumbaya moment. Everybody's happy. And then things start to get a little sticky. And as they get sticky, oh, I didn't realize this. I wasn't educated to this. And the emotions flare up. And then they kind of go into a crescendo. And then after that, everyone comes back together and hopefully the deal gets done. But it's never just an even flow of emotion. It's always I'm not selling it, I'm not buying it. It's back and forth. I think, Joe, you and I agree. You're smiling because you know it's the truth. Everyone has to get their emotions involved and satisfy their fears. And now, what I try to do is I try to bring the contract in and explain everything. I kind of relate what I do to a chiropractor that has a new patient. And, chiropractors have a tough job. We're trying to teach someone a concept that is so foreign to them, and they have to trust us and they have to believe us, and we educate them to what we're doing. And once they're educated, it's a lot easier to sell. It's all an education concept. And I do the same thing with the documents. A lot of chiros don't know what indemnification means or how to deal with files or a transition or terms. They don't understand the mechanics. And I've done this a lot, so I'm able to explain it so everyone's fear goes down. And I think that's the value I have, that I understand both the seller and the buyer's emotional position, where an attorney that does this, they don't understand it. They don't understand chiropractic. They don't understand um, really what our personality is as chiropractors. So
Yeah, I think you got to pre-frame it just like you're saying with a patient that's coming in is not knowing what they're going to pay, not knowing if it's going to hurt them. And when you pre-frame the experience, it brings the emotion into check. So in the sale, you're going to say, you explain it how, both of you are going to feel you either paid too much for the seller and you got too little for the buyer. I'm sorry, the opposite. The buyer paid too much, the seller made too little. And it's just the way it is. That's a good deal, right? So,
right.
so
I always
you
say, Joe,
position it away.
when
This
both,
is what.
when both parties feel equally miserable, because then it's equal. You're going to feel
Yeah.
emotionally, I paid too much or I gave it away. I mean, the chiropractors that have been around a long time, they say, oh, this has given me such a great living for such a long time. I hear that all the time. This has been such a great practice. I put my kids through college and all this emotion. And what really, the reality is, it doesn't matter. It's a numbers thing. It's just numbers at the end. And you should really take the emotion out.
Yeah. So if you are going to sell, that's a good point of communication, is that it doesn't matter the potential of the practice. You're not selling the potential. You're not
No.
selling what you used to do 10 years ago. You're not selling what could be done in 5 years from now. You have to get true to yourself on a value of a practice of what is your net profit. And to David's point, a lot of times when you're like selling your house, you end up staging the home and buying a new couch and painting the walls. You're like, wow, I should have done this while I lived in the house because it looks great. You want to do the same thing in the practice. You want to always be position your practice for sale. You want to, in my view, you always want to be creating a pro forma and trying to grow your practice. And you always position it. That would be a mature business man or businesswoman who's looking at progression, progressively growing and maturing the value of your practice, whether you're ready to sell or not. But that's a good exercise for you to do, building pro forma, 3-year pro forma, and trying to hit certain numbers of net profit. And if you're really mature and you have the 3 years, you want to go year over year growth and push the percent growth every year up until the sale. If you gave someone like David a package that showed 2 years ago you grew 20%, last year you grew 35%, and this year you're scaling to 50%, ask David what he's going to appraise your practice for versus you started going part-time 2 years ago, you cut your marketing last year, now you have a number that's a third what it was, and you want David to sell it for what it was worth 3 years ago. Like, David, I'm sure you get that story because I hear it all
I
the
do.
time. I'm sure you do.
I think I do appraisals and I look at one of the variables is trend. And it's a very important variable, how you're trending. I don't really put a lot of value on 3 years ago, especially with some of the events that have happened 3 years ago. Patient practices closed down. So I really look at the last 12 to 18 months. That is the most important time because really what an appraisal is predicting the next 12 to 18 months. And the best way to predict the next 12 months is looking at the past 12 months. That's all we really have. And trend, though, I do look at. My equation is not all data. It's technique. It's an activator practice. I have one now. I'm working with an activator practice. Well, it could be valued very highly if you can market in the activator clubs and sell it to an activator person, but a Gonstead person doesn't want anything to do with it, so they're going to pay a lot less for it. So everything has a lot of variables, and my job is to educate you, the practice owner, on really what reality is. And I think I could pick a number, a pretty accurate number where it's going to be sold at, if you have the time. Time is another variable.
Yeah, I think that's the main variable. You brought up a good point. Technique is one, the location, obviously, the build out, the supplies. There's many factors. Monthly
Transition.
monthly recurring revenue. How much of it is continuity of money? Huge. How many different types of payers? Is everything personal injury? Is everything Blue Cross? If you have a single payer, brings more risk, right? Longevity
The
of
whole
staff.
thing is risk. Right.
Yeah.
Risk is a word I use all the time. How do we lower risk for both parties? I like when a buyer, a seller has a long transition. It decreases the risk for everyone's success. The buyer wants a long transition, so there's a nice flow. The goodwill is transferred slowly to the new person, not just a new chiro shows up. You're going to have a lot of attrition. So you want a nice transition. It's really positive for all parties. But there's different variables, and it's an interesting equation, and each one is unique amongst itself.
Awesome. Well, thanks, David. I appreciate the framework on this. Let's just recap for a listener who's thinking about selling. Number one is timing. Figure out how long you have to sell. Number two, create a pro forma so you can start positioning the practice, looking at net profit. So if you were to call someone like David, you already have the beginning of that model. And that was number two. What was after? I don't know if you finished your cycle, but I know we
Get a strategy. Get a
have
strategy.
strategy. Okay.
2, get data. Find out where your strengths and weaknesses are so you can improve them so you get a better rate of return. Once you get everything up after maybe 8 months, then build a pro forma. Show on the pro forma that you've improved on the weaknesses, and here this is where you are. After the pro forma, start marketing your practice for sale. After you market, hopefully you're fishing now. Now you got some bites. Now, how are you going to process those people professionally? I talk to chiropractors, they get a call, and on the first call, they're trying to sell the person. Now, how do you sell on the first call? But I'm telling you, a lot of chiropractors are chomping at the bit saying, oh, this is a great practice. Don't do that. There's a process. Slowly, comfortably, getting the fear down, getting a relationship. This is a relationship business, as you know. Then once you get things pretty much settled, then you would go into contract. And the contract is a process, and it could go smoothly or not. But then once you get through that, then I always say you give the keys to the buyer, you give them a kiss, and you move on.
So if someone wanted to get in touch with you, or you offer an initial consult to kind of frame out
Yeah.
to see if this is okay, great. And they just go to backofficeconsults.com. Is that the name of the site?
That's
Okay.
me. Yeah.
Excellent. So if you guys are wanting to sell, have any questions about selling, or even the agreements, the buy-sell agreements, or an appraisal for the practice, and that may be a place where you start, is looking at what is the current value. Even if you're looking down the road, getting a value now, maturing your value over the next couple of years to get more dollars out of your asset, I think is a very mature way of moving. So David, thanks so much for your time. I'd love you in the future to break down agreements, break down appraisals, and break down so many other components, because I think the profession's ready to be matured in the sense of business. And I think you have a lot of the assets to help a lot of these doctors.
Love to help the docs. I love telling stories to explain a concept because I've experienced all the stories. And I think that why should people make the same mistake if they can avoid it?
No, that's smart.
Thank
Smart.
you, Dr. Joe.
Thank you very much. We'll have you on very soon for future episodes. Thanks, David. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
This episode was brought to you by Align Life Chiropractic and Natural Health Centers. If you're interested in creating your dream practice or want to know more about Align Life, go to alignlifepodcast.com.